as the Sudan, Upper and Lower, Northern and Southern Sudan. The Sudan was Nubia, or Nubia was the Sudan. They are the same. What has been stated was that as Egypt had a heyday, and as the Egyptian Empire was one that was great, so was the Nubian Empire one that almost did not exist, except there are diggings presently going on in Nubia at a place called Ta-Seti, T-A-S-E-T-I, Ta-Seti. And at Ta-Seti, they're finding all kinds of things. They're finding that the reason why Egypt, in probability, started off with such glamour and with such dignity and with such structures was because it was spoon-fed by the Nubian Empire. Now, they have never taught this kind of thing in rational schools, in North Central schools, or in schools where history has been told of what's called the Near Eastern continent. They are being challenged in this by a Caucasian by the name of Bruce Williams, who is a lecturing, guesting, and touring professor at the University of Chicago. It is his finds and digs at Ta-Seti in Nubia that are leading to a lot of changes, and most of his digs are still being cataloged in either the lower floors of the museum or in the research areas of his department. They are still openly not pervading and showing all of the things that they've already found. What they have found, again, is an incense burner, one of copper, one of gold. They have found jewelry and pottery. They have found a wheel. Of course, we know when the wheel supposedly was invented. They have found things of stone that are carved. They have found regality, royalty, thrones. They have found ships that could go to sea, and pictures of ships that could go to sea with triple-headed people on them, meaning by this, triple-crowned people, which meant that they ruled both lower and upper areas of these places, and that they had royalty, they had a class system, they had schools and libraries, the whole thing. And this would only mean, since Nubia has never been guessed to be anything but a black area, a dark-skinned people carrying melanins, place of habitat, then it only shows even more that the history of Egypt and the history of Africa can go back and back and back in time. And much like that Newsweek article is saying, the reason why they can make these kind of assertions now, and people shake their heads and say, how can they dare, is because the scholars have already unearthed many things that they are not talking about in general. Where it could be commonplace by now, they are still subversively hiding most of this information. And the only reason I can see is because this is about a black person, black people in a black land. Whether you call it Negroid or colored, whether you say they're African, or whether you say that they were simply the ancient Negritos, this has to be the place where these people had great cities and had great impact. I'm going to pass to you at this time also another class outline. In fact, Rhonda, can I get you to kind of come to the side over here? And we've got two other pass outs, if you don't mind. One on Nubia, and then we'll be going over something on the chronology of Egyptian histories. After that, those are the end of our pass outs for this evening. This is the one on Nubia. And then after that, this is the one on Thank you. Okay, the first one you get will be, it states on there, Nubia, the oldest monarchy. Some will be in white, some will be in pink. Don't worry about it, they're all the same sheets. If there are any left over, we will put them on the table again where the books are in support of tonight's class. State Nubia, the oldest monarchy. And you might want to take a couple of minutes just to run through it. But in the general, it is what I have stated, that they're finding places at Ta-Seti, and some of the things they're finding, and some of the reasons that they're saying now that this may mean that this is a very old continent. And of course, this is information that you can see that you almost make your own history book based on modern findings and not on what has been generally told in our schools. By the way, too, the two coordinators for your Black History class, in case you can't get me, is Rhonda, who is just passing out some material to you, and Karen, who is in the back. In fact, you're about to take. You're leaving? Karen? Okay, well, thank you very much for the support and signing in. And if you wish to have questions or you have questions about your payments or about other things, you would contact either of those two young ladies and they can tell you how you can do so again for your Thursday classes. Okay, let's move now to our second sheet, which is 2 pages, and that is the one on the chronology of Egyptian dynasties, the Black World History course, chronology of Egyptian dynasties. It starts off with 3800, or it should start off with 3800 to 2700 BC. I think it might have 32 on it. Is that 32 or 38? 38. Okay, some have 32. All right. They put it at 32 to make sure that they were safe. I say put it at 38 and you know you're still safe. Actually, you can put it back about 42 and you wouldn't be too far wrong. But this is what you call being super safe. It states only that the Egyptian dynasty started off at about this time. But it started off with a battle that was fought between a man by the name of Scorpion, just like the scorpion that stings, and a man by the name of Menes. Scorpion and Menes. Scorpion represented Nubia. He represented as a general in the Nubian army that fought a battle with one of the breakaway provinces, a group of people who chose to expand from Nubia and then were joined with other people from Nubia, creating what was called the First Egyptian Dynasty. That dynasty, that Egyptian history, starts off with a man by the name of Menes. His full name was Menes Narmer. Menes Narmer. Narmer, believe it or not, means or meant, whichever, hippopotamus hunter, or one who hunts. A Narmer was one who hunted hippopotami. So actually you could say Menes Narmer was a great hippopotamus hunter, so much so that Narmer was given him as a name. And Menes more or less means great or great one or strong one, something along this line. Menes Narmer was the first ruler of Egypt. Scorpion was a general already in the Nubian army, and this day they fought a battle. Now understand, this battle wasn't fought, although they had many men in arms. This was not fought by great armies of people on horseback or great armies of people on giraffes or gibbons or whichever you would. This was fought by 100 men from each side, even though there were thousands in the army. The battles at that time were not fought by masses of men in Africa. They were fought with masses of men watching while the leaders and a crack elite possibly would fight. So you had like 200 men taking place, and then once that had been decided, it got down to Scorpion and Menes and about 3 of their elite guards. It was Menes who beat Scorpion in this battle. And he could have chosen to kill him. He did not. He spared his life, and in the movies, of course, once you spare the life, supposedly this man is disgraced. Not like in this instance. And what he did do was to not only spare his life, but ask then that since they had proven that they were capable, in at least in combat, to hold their own, and since they were asking for a chance to continue their provincial work away from the mother country, or away from the mother land, in this case Nubia, that they be supported in this, and because of this, they would then support Nubia in her undertakings. To give a pretty good credence that this is exactly what happened, we must understand that there were 2 gods at this particular time. There was a god that was the ancient god of all Africa, which we talked about last week, which was Ra. And then there was a new god that the Egyptians had given almost to the same rank as Ra, that was called Amun. And first gods of Egypt being Amun Ra, which showed a direct linkage with the ancient Nubian civilization and now the modern Egyptian civilization. And they combined and had one god out of two, Amun Ra. When we also look at the start of this dynastic period, and dynastic only means that these were all people who had shared, it's like dynasty on the radio, shared this basic bloodline at the beginning. And as long as the reigning monarch had bloodlines in this reign, that dynasty continued. When they no longer produced a male heir and could no longer spread their blood, then that dynasty ended and somebody else's dynasty started. So that's what is meant by a dynasty. Yes. It is during this period of time that many of the pyramids are said to have been started and finally completed. Many of what they call the ziggurats, that is S-A-Q-Q-U-A-R-A-T-S, the ziggurats. And one of the most famous was a place called Abydos, which was in Egypt, where they built a couple of step pyramids, if you would. Also, when we look at this dynasty under Mene-the-Narmer and under the breakaway from the Egyptians, we find again the father of Zoser being born in the second dynasty, roughly around 3100 BC, even though on the sheet it is 29. And it is under this dynasty that two great men flourished. And I do want to mention this because sometimes it's overlooked. His name is Casimoi, and Imhotep. Casimoi begins to bring in a regal system to Egypt and begins to talk in terms of Upper and Lower Egypt being one. Not only have they now broken away from Nubia, but the Nile River flows backwards. The interesting thing about the land elevation of Egypt is that the way it's situated, the upper areas where you had your big to-dos, where you had your big, if you would, buildings and so, and then the lower flatlands going down toward the Mediterranean, going down toward the sea, is where you had your markets and people living on like in the suburbs, the edges of the city. So it was from a height downward. And Upper Egypt, the height areas where you had your royalty, down toward the coastal lines where you had your suburbs, if you would. Casimoi set up a system of barter and a system of exchange with the lower Egyptians and the upper Egyptians, and even carried on trade and commerce with the Nubian, and as we shall see with other civilizations that were in Africa, in its lower western borders. Imhotep, or some call it Imhotep, whichever way it is, I-M-H-O-T-E-P, Imhotep.
How do you spell that?
Yes, that's even more. Now let's see how we check again, because there's a certain little trick spelling of K here. K-H, I'll put it on the board, K-H-A-S-E-K-H-E-M-U-Y. 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 Imhotep, I-M-H-O-T-E-P, or Imhotep. Now, it is stated in history now that Imhotep was, again, a person who was doing brain surgery, a person who was doing open heart surgery. Of course, Daniel L. Williams must wait. A person who was engaged in vaccinations, a person who used penicillin, mold, and fungi, a person who was consulted for even a form of semi-hypnosis, ability to put a person into a comatose state at will by mind pressure, actually pressing on some of the lobes of the brain, and by the use of other herbs and drugs that the Egyptians knew of. Now, all of this was done in the court of Casimoi and done through Imhotep, who was considered Greeks never did. And yet he never claimed to be the father of medicine. He stated that he learned it from the priest. The priest of Memphis, the priest of Men's, and so on like this, and that these had been hand-me-downs for generations within this area where he lived. So it is almost, again, hypocritical in the sense of hypocrisy making a statement. And of course, most of the medicine men of today who are called medical doctors take what they even call the Hippocratic oath. There's a symbol that they use, however, that is called the caduceus. And you explain some medical doctor, unless he's also possibly an advanced Mason, at least over 28 degrees, to explain to you what that caduceus means, even though they use it as supposedly an allopathic symbol of medical technology. They cannot, because it is a metaphysical symbol. It's an Cushite symbol. It is a symbol that was used in ancient Egypt. And they cannot do so because there's nothing to do with the modern interpretation. When we, again, go forth from there, I guess I'm going to try and bring up just highlights of things that should be possibly remembered by you. We find under the dynasty of Huni, now, unless I otherwise stated, I am claiming, and you are studying black history, which means that these pharaohs, unless otherwise stated, are all black, or, using the proper verbiage, Negroid. And whatever mixtures come in, we will state when those mixtures come in. Right now, you have nothing but what we call Negrito black, or people carrying melanin dynasties. Under Huni, or Hunai, if you would, there is a son born called Rahotep. Rahotep, R-A-H-O-T-E-P. Not Imhotep now, but Rahotep. And probably between the 27th to the 26th dynasties, or again, or not dynasties, but those years, 2000 BC, this was probably the only pharaoh there of note. And Rahotep got his note because he went outside the borders and began to also do exploration in other areas and to try and bring into the Egyptian rulership extraterritorial, again going around hundreds of miles in all directions. During the period of time under what is called the Fourth Dynasty, roughly about 2680, 2680 BC, you had the rhomboidal pyramid being built. And you had many of what we call the step pyramid rhomboidals. Rhomboidal pyramid, rhomboid in the sense, is like two flat planes, one put up on top of the other. So the rhomboidal pyramids look like what we would call the ziggurats or something like this. And then there were areas of excavation around that place. One of the first rhomboidal pyramids was said to be Seneferu. Seneferu. S-E-N-E-F-E-R-U. Seneferu. Now, that's not Senfru, Seneferu that you see. There's no Khufu, no Khafre, no Menkare. It is Seneferu. And he was the father of Khufu. Khufu later becomes known as Cheops, and it was pronounced Cheops by the Greeks who could not pronounce Khufu. And this is why the tongue and the term saying it's Greek to me was always used, because most of the words that they heard, inasmuch as they were very uneducated, guttural people, they could not pronounce, and they began to make tones and intoneness of their own, which became a language that later was copied. Had nothing to do with the way the sounds were when the people were stating the names of these things, but simply Grecian interpretation. Okay. As we again look in this area of pyramid buildings, we find that the big three pyramids, which are found near Cairo, are formed from the names of these pharaohs that lived during these dynasties. You have what is called Menkare's pyramid. You have what is called as Cheops pyramid. You have what is called the unclassified pyramid. In actuality, they were said to have been built by Khufu, or for Khufu, under his dynasty, under Menkare, later on called even Microananus and Microsinus by the Greeks. Don't ask me how Menkare became Microananus and Microsinus, but they did. And Seneferu is where, Khafre, Kafir, is generally what is referred to as the unclassified pyramid of the big three found at the site that's so famous there in Egypt and near Cairo. In the 6th dynasty, you have Una's pyramid. You might want to write that in, because it's not on your sheet. Una's pyramid. And then Teti I's pyramid in about the 6th dynasty. Una's is UNA, and Teti I is TETI 1, TETI 1. What they were more known for is, again, the rapidity of trying to duplicate some of the older pyramids and having them built within a 10-year period of time during their reign. We move then through, as not too much happens in Egypt other than it expands, it begins to take in more trade, it begins to let in people from West Africa and from the Mid-East come into their lower levels, and that's about it. Our probably next highlight in time should be the 11th dynasty, about 134 BC. And you have then Mentuhotep I, and later on his son Mentuhotep II, M-E-N-T-O-H-O-T-E-P, Mentuhotep I and II. Mentuhotep I and Mentuhotep II also begin to ornately add figures and sketchings to some of the great pyramids in their internal chambers. Then you have the person known as Sesostris, or Sesostris, whichever, and he has a son, so you have Sesostris I and Sesostris II. He comes in, or they come in, about the 12th dynasty, and there you might want to pencil in S-E-S-O-S-T-R-I-S, S-E-S-O-S-T-R-I-S, Sesostris I and II, ancient Egyptian pharaohs. They also helped to pave the streets, if you would, that in the areas that were arid, and to, again, resurface, if you would, some of the homes that began to break up during about that dynasty, to glamorize the city, if you would. We skip through what is called the Hyksos period, and it's called the Hyksos period mainly because it is at this time that a race of people not looking like the Egyptian people or their Nubian cousins or brothers, if you would, came into being. And there was some race mixing in the lower areas of Egypt with these so-called Hyksos people, and that should be spelled H-Y-K-S-O-S. Hyksos or Hyksos, H-Y-K-S-O-S. These Hyksos did not take the throne of Egypt, nor did they get formally into its cabinetry, or definitely not into its priestcraft. They simply were people who did mingle with some of the Egyptians living near the coastal areas, and therefore became Egyptians by amalgamation, and any sons and daughters Egyptian by bloodline. So you have an infusion there into Egypt, but not a domination or an attack by the Hyksos. We go even further now, and we'll move to what I like to refer to as the 18th dynasty. And this starts what is called the heyday of Egypt. This is a height now of the Egyptian history as we are beginning to learn. We start off with a person by the name of Thutmose I, that is T-H-U-T-M-O-S-E, Thutmose the First, or Thutmose I. Thutmose was a benevolent king who also wanted to expand Egypt in influence and in commerce. And he began to do as Rahotep had done, and Una to a limited degree, to go out thousands of miles or hundreds of miles for at least 2 or 3 months out of the year to see if they can add territory and keep influence for Egypt. Thutmose I also served or had in his cabinet maybe I should even phrase it that way because they didn't have priests in their cabinets per se. Just as Menes and Cassimoy had Imhotep, these people had a person by the name of Shabaka. Some call it Shabaka. Shabaka or Shabaka, S-H-A-B-A-K-E. Shabaka was a priest and a learned man of science. And he wrote, after entering into his 38th year, a compilation of some of the best things that he had found on some of these travels with the Egyptian army. and that he had read with some of the scribes of ancient Medes and out of Nubia, and came up with what he called a code for living with a belief in a creator. They were known then later as the negative confessions. It is Shabbat at this dynasty, we're talking now around 1557, who wrote what is called the 32 negative confessions. The 32 negative confessions. They became the centering post and the cohesive for what was referred to later on by Budge and Matthews, and so as the Egyptian Book of the Dead. It's during this century that these Shabbatas articles were put. Now, why do I point that out? Because we will later see, if you take the metaphysical course, and even if you don't, you'll hear some references at time to time about these lost books. There was nothing lost about the books, but what they did there was to actually take many of these writings, in fact 12 of them, from the original 32 negative confessions, and they became what was known as the Ten Commandments. Now, I state that because even though we know into Mount Sinai, of course, and we find that Moses, later on precursing Jesus' coming, is given this through God, the commandments, you will find that if you will read in the Egyptian Book of the Dead, and there are copies of it at the library or at the museum where you're going, both by Budge and Matthews, they will find that they read almost exactly alike, or the emphasis is definitely there. It's easy to see in correspondence, like the Ten Commandments. The only trouble is there are then 22 more. And they were known as the negative confessions of Shabbat. The Egyptian Book of the Dead is anything but about death. Or about dead people. It is really their book of life, because the Egyptians, part and parcel, you cannot even study Egyptology without understanding, both through their commerce, both through their teachings, both through their way of life. They believed in reincarnation completely. They believed in past lives, and they believed that everything they were doing then was a culmination of things they had done before, and that the gods that they served and that the bloodline and family lines were all again reincarnated. So you must understand that in understanding Egyptian history and their whole way of being, from the chairs and beds that they slept on, as we'll see, to their religion, definitely, and the way that they did things, was a fervent and complete belief in reincarnation. And it was that it was considered that the soul, once departed from the body at what we call death, which they call transition, would have to be judged by many of the Egyptian lower gods. They had high gods, low gods, middle gods, and one creator, Ra, or Amun-Ra, if you will. And that Thoth, T-O-T-H, or some refer to it as T-H-O-T-H, I've seen it spelled both ways, was this god of judgment that ruled the underworld, near Amentai, A-M-E-N-T-I, and that once the soul had departed his ka, which is the spirit or soul, where that's his body, they were then, before they could go to the netherworlds or to the lower regions or to Amentai, they had to be judged by Thoth and his minions. And one of the things that they did, they had what later on became known in the Christian Bible as cherubim and cherubim. They had these judges, or these lesser little elementals, who would then take the soul and weigh it on the scales, which we now call the scales of justice, but the scale, and later on the Greeks called it the scales of Minerva. But these were simply called the scales of Ka, which were read by Thoth. And if the soul had only to balance against the weight of a feather, in other words, if there was so much on this soul's mind that he or she had done wrong and they were really worried, and their soul weighed the weight of a feather, they were judged unclean enough to go to the new world and were possibly doomed to relive another life, as judges were taught. So all of this was believed in and taught through the negative confessions, or a way of life to preserve life, which were called the Egyptian Book of the Dead. The first female ruler of Egypt also comes into being during these Hittite dynasty. Under again, approximately about 1489, you see on your sheet there a name Hatshepsut. Hatshepsut. H-A-T-S-E-P-S-U-T. Hatshepsut was a female. Tutmos I was her father. And Hatshepsut means she who keeps shut. And I like to say, and of course, do that that way because it helps me remember history, not because I'm trying to denigrate the lady. I do some key things to help these figures stay keen in my mind, and you might want to make the same judgments, or you might want to substitute whatever you would. But Hatshepsut sounds like something like maybe Kepsut, Gibshut, along the line, but that was her name, Hatshepsut. She also is stated by many in history now who denigrate her as being a lesbian, which is not true at all, as I can understand through historical records. The reason why they say this is simply for one reason. She had a beard. But you must understand something now. None of the Egyptians up through the 26th dynasty had beards. They couldn't even grow beards. So when you see pictures of the Pharaoh, like you see on the cover there, Tutankhamun and Ramesses over there, and as you will see in National Geographic, which we're going to spend a little time with there, some of the diggings that they did at Abu Simbel when they moved from Thebes to Tel Amarna. These bearded pharaohs are not beards that are grown. Strike that from your mind. They were tie-ons that we put them on Halloween fall spaces. And they all had the same type of tie-on. It was simply a band that fit almost like elastic around it. And they would adjust it, put it on the chin, and they would trim it to their own body mass type. And they wore them. The Egyptians were a clean-shaven person. Many of them could not even grow thick beards. Those beards, and if you look very closely at the stelas, which are statues of recognition, and if you look at some of the frescoes and pictographs and prints that come from the tombs and things, you'll see the direct line there. It even shows up on the picture there of Tutankhamun and upon Ramesses. They were not beards. The beards didn't come into the later dynasties, the Ptolemies, where you had to be. They were simply hang on. But somewhere in their history, there was this reverence, obviously, among some of these pharaohs and rulers for a beard meaning wisdom, or in some way or another making a person seem more aged, and it was age they respected the wisdom of understanding. Because when they had big decisions to make, when they wanted to really get respect, they put on a beard. Well, Hatshepsut, who was the first female ruler of Egypt, followed the same pattern. When she had something heavy to say, when she wanted respect, when she called her council, she slipped on the beard. And now, of course, from that comes this legitimate derogatory connotation that she was possibly a lesbian. Okay? So I hope that does explain it. She was the daughter of Thutmose I. She was the aunt of Thutmose III. The aunt of Thutmose III. Now I bring that out because during her reign, she could do everything that a man could do but declare and wage war. They did not, for some reason, allow her to declare and wage war. She could build, tax, spend money in prisons, on the war. She could not declare and wage war. And during her time, she had a nephew who was just easygoing and so on and so forth. His name was Thutmose III. Thutmose III. When Hatshepsut died, and during her reign, she had more statues built and her name put on them, and more of the city was really refurbished under her reign. She had her name everywhere. She had big buildings, if you want to call it, and architecture, plazas. As soon as she died, no more than 2 weeks after she died, Thutmose III showed the animosity and resentment that he obviously had for his all that time that he never mentioned during his lifetime. He began to deface and take her name off of every stela he could find, off of every cigarette that he could find. Anywhere, and she had her name all over Egypt. Anywhere he found it, off with her name. And replaced it with symbols, and sometimes his name was placed over it and so on again. He erased all of it from the countryside. As we again look there, it was then also through Thutmose III that this going out on campaigns to acquire more territory and control territory was resumed. And it really had its heyday through Ramesses, as we should so see. If we turn the page now, your 2-page yellow sheet or white sheet, if you so have it, we look at probably the most heralded figures of Egyptologies, or Egypt's golden age. And it refers to the 18th dynasty as the golden age. Well, see, what is the golden age of Egypt? 18th dynasty, please remember. That is your heyday. That is the height. There was no height in Egypt equal to that from that 18th dynasty. The figures that history now talks about, and who J.A. Amenhotep the fourth. They are Akhenaten. I'll spell these later for you. Most of them are on your sheet. They are Queen Tai, Queen Nefertiti, and of course the famous Tutankhamun. We should also include King I in there. Now this is a generation of people who, again, much I think has been much misunderstood. The best I can say is that when under the start of Tutmosis III, the Egyptians then went off 6 months out of a year on campaigns to acquire and to control. One of their best generals was a general by the name of Amenhotep, and Amenhotep IV. Amenhotep, while on one of his excursions, seemingly ran into some of the holy men from the Orient, which we would now call the Far East, who were spending time in what we call Mesopotamia II, later on Iraq, Iran, and the great Anatolia, which was Turkey, places like this. And they found a philosophy which was to his liking, one that seemingly engendered the best of the Egyptian gods with this of these foreign gods. There was a belief in one creator, one overall ruler of the heavens, of the cosmos. And you know, we talked about that last week, that Ra was that person. And then we got on branches of Tepnut and Memphis and Nanu and all this kind of thing. But they didn't call this particular god per se Ra. They were just simply saying that it was a belief in one God, and the word sounded to his Egyptian ear more like something like Aton, or one that ruled all, the Most High, Aton, A-T-O-N. So this seemingly stuck with Amenhotep, and after a very bloody battle with one of the northern provinces, he decided that he could no longer wage this type of a war. He no longer felt that the strength of Egypt was dependent upon this, and that there should be a more peaceful means, and he set upon himself to do so. In fact, he went to such an extreme that when he came back to Egypt, he refused to go any more conquering campaigns, and stated that once his father had died and his other guys had died, he would take over. Well, interesting enough, these people died, and within 1 year of his return from his last campaign, he was pronounced Pharaoh of Egypt, or King of Egypt. And with it came in a whole then different religion. They kept the old gods, but he simply told them that those gods were not to be worshipped, as was the Most High. That if they chose to keep those, they could do that in the quiet silence of their home as individuals, but as a state, they would then be ruled and hold homage to Aton. And he changed his name to He Who Worships and Serves Aton, or Akhenaten. Akhenaten. And it's written, it looks something like this. He who worships the Most High Aton, he who serves the Most High Aton, he who is respectful of the Most High Aton. He claims, therefore, if you see, and some people think it's topographical errors, or teacher or professor being wrong, or one archaeologist being right over another, it is not at all. You sometimes see transposed, picture looking like Akhenaten with the name Amenhotep IV. Or you see Amenhotep IV, and you sometimes see Akhenaten. And it's been asked, well, were these two different men? And some scholars actually believe that these are two different people. I make it very clear for you in our record, because this is not. His name was that until he took on a new demeanor, much like many of the Muslims under the Honorable Elijah Muhammad took an X at times, or much like many of the men and women in the late 60s and early 70s took Swahili names, or as many people would now change to what they call more of the African name. It only was a name that meant something. In ancient times, names meant something. You just didn't take a name Blair, or take a name Moore, or take a name Robinson, or take a name Williams. You took a name that described something either about your most favorite ancestor, who was powerful, or a description of yourself or what you would like to be. traveling, he had learned a lot about what is called phrenology, the science of studying the bumps on the skull, how skulls were shaped. And he found that his bloodline, especially through his mother, Queen Tai, T-I-Y-I, through his father, King I, and through many of his sisters. He had 6 sisters, so I won't go into all of their names. But they all had one peculiar trait. They had long heads, occipital lobe. And for those of you that say it's interesting, we almost have a whole different group of people here tonight than we did last week. But we talked about Negritos as being some of the oldest people on our planet. And the Negrito is described as being diminutive, meaning spider built, small. Some of them were no more than 4 feet 5. None of them hardly got over 4 foot 9. When you find a 5-footer, it's like a 6-footer today, almost like a 7-footer today would be the height that we're getting. And these were dark-skinned people with long heads, what they call diminutive, occipital lobe, and spider built. These Negritos were found just about everywhere. Imhotep, by the way, who we talked about the physician, was a Negrito. He was not a big, tall man at all. He was a little, short, small man with a very long head, very soft with build, very features very soft and small. And we find the same thing there when we're dealing now, of course, with Akhenaten's family. And they had a peculiar, long-shaped head. It is my belief, now, that's correct, this is my belief, that many of the Egyptian dynasties based around the 17th to the 18th and 26th dynasties, especially with the bloodlines of I and Amenopis and later on Nefertiti, all had long heads. That's one of the reasons why they wore this interesting type of a headdress, because it was a way of kind of disguising the extra elongation of the head. And I meant to bring one of my, you can check out the book of Pharaohs there, which will have some pictures of Akhenaten and Tutankhamun, and also the other book on Egypt. But in general, I think you'll find, if you check most of the places, and I'll try to remember next week, not Sunday, but next week, to bring some of the pictures that I have. I meant to bring anyway of I and Nefertiti and Atai. But also J.E. Rogers has a very good area there when you look at Egypt or something like that. They have long heads, very peculiarly long heads, extra long heads considering, you know, how the normal head was supposed to be shaped. I want to spend just a little bit more time because this is the Egyptian heyday. When Akhenaten became Akhenaten and king of Pharaoh of Egypt, if you would, he had many wives as Amenopis. He began to relinquish his wives as he got more and more pious, or he would not serve them even though they carried his bloodline and his children. But he did take to him one particular wife who seemingly was his favorite. Her name was Nefertiti. Nefertiti, you hear so much about Nefertiti in history. Nefertiti was a commoner. She was not a royal blood. She was not a basic Egyptian. He met her in some of his travels to the Near East and sent for her later as wife. She was a dancer. She was seemingly a psychic. She had wealth that she had amassed for some areas, and I'm really not sure, although history begins to allude to where she got her wealth. But she had a peculiar thing too, a very long head. And he had been taught that the occipital lobe, the elongated hind head, meant psychic power and development. Thus, when Nefertiti became his wife, they were precipitating a lineage of long-haired psychic individuals. There was animosity between Nefertiti and his mother, Queen Tai, who thought that his other wives should have retained favor, especially one who her favorite granddaughter was born to, and they did not take to each other. And for as long as they both lived, there was this animosity between Queen Tai and Nefertiti. It is during Akhenaten's reign that they moved the capital of Egypt from Thebes, Thebes, to Tel Amarna. And you will see it in the museum what they call Tel Amarna art, a art form change. I won't go into that a lot because your tour guide and those will explain a lot of this himself. After that, the only things we find? Oh, we find that more and more Akhenaten does less and less for the state and for rulership, and spend more and more time in meditation and serving Aton. He leaves most of his running to Nefertiti, to some of his sisters, one brother we hear very little about, and his mother, Queen Nefertiti. His mother, Queen Tai. More and more, Nefertiti felt that her position was shaky because as he no longer commanded supposedly the respect from the men of the kingdom, then he felt that the priests who were very despicable, because you can imagine, the priest had great power in Egypt. And here he comes with a whole new religion of one God, giving the priests and the gods they served less power, so they didn't like him. And they were about the business of trying to usurp him anyway, and as he retreated from the limelight, then more and more Nefertiti saw the need that either he must be bolstered up, or possibly her life would be lost in an overthrow by the priests of Minis. It is stated that she conspired with the priests of Minis then to poison Akhenaten. Whether that is provable or not, history does not say. But the alludings are that she did conspire or left openings, and that Akhenaten died before his 39th birthday, and he died of poisoning his effect. Who poisoned him is arguable. After that, they had one son, and the son's name was Tut, or Tutankhamun. And Tutankhamun, of course, then was heir to the throne from his father and mother's side. There's controversy as to whether Tutankhamun was actually the son of Nefertiti, which many historians say he was not, but the son of his sister. And others even go as far as say that there was incest and that he was the son of Tai and Akhenaten. I make no other talks toward that, but to let you understand that part of history which tries to argue who Tutankhamun's mother was, even though they say the son, he was the father of Akhenaten. But the argument is to whether it was one of the sisters, whether it was Queen Tai herself, or whether it was Nefertiti. It almost categorically states it was not Nefertiti's son. So at the end, those who state that since she was his main wife, that this was her son, are wrong. There was, of course, then a need to change this dynasty because Tutankhamun was said to have been a natural-born psychic, or the seventh son of his seventh son. And this is also one of the reasons it was stated that supposedly they wanted Tutankhamun to come to a bloodline of deep meditation and psychic because he was supposed to be born with the ability to prophesy, as was the sign of Uraeus is true of all rulers of Egypt. Those that bore the sign of, they say, Upper and Lower Egypt, or the double snake, meant that they had, again, psychic power as well as rulership. And it was stated that Tutankhamun would definitely carry on this new lineage. Tutankhamun actually takes the throne when he is 8 years old. He rules only until he is 18, some say 17 and a half, and in his 18th year, he is killed by poison. Very interesting. And of course, we know the impact that Tutankhamun, or King Tut, as he has come to be known, has on the world, because when their entourage came through roughly about 5-6 years ago, millions of people in America went to see him. When it went over to Europe, millions of people, when it went to the Middle East, people saw him. There is something special, something that is magnetic about this gold and the riches that were found with these 18th dynasty, and about the name even came to Tutankhamun. To move past there, it is later on that that three pharaohs come into existence that also shaped the course of Egypt. One is called Seti I, and it is Seti I who ran both the Hittites and the Hyksos out of Africa and out of Lower Egypt. He stated that he wanted to restore the great powers of Minis, and he did not want any outsider or commoner in his kingdom. Later on, Ramesses I and later Ramesses II, whose wife was Nefertari, had nothing to do with Nefertiti, and Nefertari, many people confuse those two names, also took up the ability to go back out on campaigns to try and hold on to territory. And again, they began to give more credence to the other Egyptian gods other than just to Aton, the one god. And then later under Ramesses III, again, the idea of putting a extreme border around Egypt and controlling and doing any fighting or commerce outside of that border to make sure that Egypt siege or matriculation to another power was reinforced under Ramesses III. From all of that glory, all of that holding, all of that gold, all of that rulership, and all of that deep religious value, there came the most weak period that Africa seemingly has known outside of the so-called modern ages. And that is when the Tanite kings came into being. The Tanite kings were a mixture of the deposed or exposed or espoused, really, kicked out Hyksos and Hittite people. And this was the first line under one dynasty that the Tanites came into power in Egypt. They ruled for no more than 34 years, and within the 34 years of rule, there were 3 different Tanite kings. This was the first time then that the throne may have been ascended by none other than true Egyptian bloodline. We find under the 22nd dynasty a person by the name of Shishonk and Osorkon III, who were mixtures of both Hittite people and Hyksos people and Egyptians. But understand one thing. When we refer back to the Table of Nations, you will see that some of the bloodlines, again, under Punt, one of the descendants of Ham, was supposedly then the Hittite people. A lot of historians don't want to agree with that. But if you check with the Table of Nations, and if you hold the Table of Nations as being a guide, then you must also understand that these people then must have had black blood also, because they became one of the sons of Noah, or Ham, again, in reference to the Table of Nations. When we go through the 23rd dynasty, this is about 817 BC, we have a great ruler coming again out of Nubia. As Nubia has stood by and seen the greatness of Egypt, they had fought a couple of battles, but more and more they had become just more or less detente. And as long as the rulership was still in the bloodline of the ancient kings, it was okay. But when Shishonk and Osorkon took view, and when Nubia began to feel that maybe there was going to be a taking over of non-black bloodlines, it was Bianchi, later on called Bianchi, later on called Pinki, who comes, Bianchi, P-I-A-K-H-I, who comes up from Nubia, takes again over the throne, and restores it, trying to emulate the great dynasties preceding and entering into the 18th dynasty again. There was a big battle that was fought by Bianchi, who captured many of the Egyptian cities in a very close space of time, within 90 days, if you would. One was called Thermopylae, and they had simply, under Shishonk and Osorkon III, named again some of the ancient Egyptian cities into more like a cross city, like you would say, a cross between Greek and Hyksos language. And they called it Thermopylae. There was a commander that was named there of Namlak, who was a mixture of, shall we say, Egyptian and Hittite. And he was defeated. He was considered a great general. He was defeated there. And then they even marched all the way to Memphis, and they defeated there Tefnank. All right, T-E-F-N-A-K-H-T-E. T-E-F-N-A-K-H-T-E. And then finally, Pharaoh Osorkon again surrendered Heliopolis to Bianchi. So with those historians who say, well, the Nubians never had great power in Egypt itself, that is not true. Under Bianchi, about 817 BC, the Nubians not only had power, they took again the throne of Egypt and combined Egypt and Nubia into one kingdom. Again, there was a 60-year period of time when this portion of northeast Africa ruled, and then, as usual, as the strong winds fell away, the weaker winds took over, and there was only one other dynastic king of really royal Nubian blood that was able to take the throne for almost another 250 years. And that man's name was Taharka, a true Nubian king and one of the ancestors of Bianchi. Taharka, T-A-H-A-R-K-A. Now, on the Budweiser map and some of the others, you will find it spelled with a Q. So whether it's T-A-H-A-R-Q-A or Q-U-A or T-A-H-A-R-K-A, which was the K. K was died away. And from that point on, it is down here with a mixture of the Assyrians who took the throne for a while, a few Persians who took the throne for a while, and then all the way down to 332 BC. And by this time, by the way, many of the ancient Egyptians began to go to the Far East and to go into what is now called Central and Western Africa. Africa at that time was not called Africa. In fact, we'll find out in our history, it wasn't until the 10th century that they named Africa. Africa was called Kema. As most of the things there were with K's. K represented a crane with arm outstretched or leg upraised. Kema, K-H-E-M-A. K-H-E-M-A, Kema. One of the other names, too, is, what was that? Bulu land, or something. I forget that spelling and put it on one of the maps. Akibu land, that was it. Akibu land, but that was about, about the 5th century AD. And Kema and Kim was one that was even more ancient than Kema. Kim, K-E-M, the land of the Caps, or Kafirs, Kafirian people. That was probably around 8,000 or 9,000 BC. So you have various spellings there of Africa. But Africa is really one of the most debased, and really non-educated names for that continent, but yet it's one that is stuck. The old names all were with K's. And as I say, as we move on, we'll get more into some of these other names and names that are there.
Would you spell Kubulan?
Kibulan, you would, wouldn't you?
Oh, wait.
Okay. That's okay.
I get it.
Well, something pretty close to that. A-K-E-Y-B-O-U-L-A-N-D. It might be B-O-L, but I think there's a U in there too. Kibulan. And you'll very seldom find that spelling, but that was for a few centuries also one of the names for that time. Then we come into 332 BC. And it is then that out of the upper Netherlands, the Baltic area, the hinterland, if you would, came a people from a city called Macedonia, which they claimed was beyond the Netherlands, or the far-reaching lands. And these people were tall and big compared to the Egyptians, heavy of leg and ankle, and like beasts. They were killers, they were warriors. They fought better than anybody around them. Everywhere that they went, people just got beat up with rocks and stones and with spears and whatever else they had. Nobody was able to stand up against them for long, seemingly. And this tribe of people, they don't know exactly where they came from, except that they came from some of the mountains in this area. And as they swept down, wherever they found people that were living in cities, they seemed to almost have a hatred for them. They could neither read nor write. They were plagued with diseases and acted and looked more like animals than they did people. The leader of this group of people was called Alexander. And we hear in history of Alexander because of his conquest being great. I refuse to use that term. I refer to him as Alexander the Macedonian, or Alexander from Macedonia. You can take your pick. It is the same Alexander that I'm referring to. He had with him probably his most educated right arms, a man by the name of Ptolemy and his sons, P-T-O-L-E-M-Y, Ptolemy. And under Ptolemy, they began to learn to do some reading and writing of what they called the Egyptian hieroglyphics. Hieros means of the gods or sacred, and glyph means writing. So a hieroglyph was a writing of the gods that was sacred to the Egyptians. Nothing was sacred to these people that called themselves Greek. They had no religion. And then petroglyphs are simply glyphs that are found on rocks or hard places, tablets, and therefore please do not confuse when they refer to the Egyptian hieroglyphs and hieroglyphics as to Egyptian petroglyphs. One was a sacred writing used by the priest and used to show how medicine could be used, and the use of herbs and things. The other was just common writing on tablets of papyrus or whichever was petroglyphs, and usually again on some of the hard rocks. That's why they call it petro. The Greeks, please understand, could not read, could not write, and did not even speak well. Different tribes of these Greeks, or different enclaves of them, used different grunts from other ones, and they used a guttural type of a sound that only after some 15 years in Egypt did they begin to refine to any of the basic writings, and only after some 200 years did they begin to even get into the writings and stuff to get into what would be now called Grecian hierarchy. For many, and many scholars, and unfortunately many black students who have gone to school, they feel that the period of Renaissance, the period of really Earth's history that is worth something, starts with Grecian society, and then later on with Roman society, excluding almost 6, 7, 8, 9,000 years of rulership of a people that these people finally came into their land and learned from them. There are some people who actually believe that the Greeks taught the Egyptians how to read, that the Greeks taught the Egyptians and gave the Egyptian literature, and here the Greeks didn't even come on the scene. They weren't even known. There were no people like them even known until 332 BC, almost 400 years after the Egyptian age of the golden age. Yet there are actually people, students who go through school with advanced degrees that don't know that. So you're in an exceptional few, or at least there's something that's becoming kind of somewhat common history now. Alexander dies there in Egypt, and he dies of syphilis. And syphilis was a disease that came with mating with animals. And these people mated with animals and did have progenies. And this is what is talked about also in kind of the functional returns. They actually would mate with animals. And something was born to these people that was not even human, and that they even would eat. And the diseases that were brought into Egypt under the Greeks are just horrendous. When all of that is past, we finally find the only educated branch of the Greek history is traced under the Ptolemies, and Ptolemy I, which they call Sotar, became the first, Ptolemy I Philadelphia, because they had heard of the city of Philadelphia in Egypt, and they named himself after it. And he became the first Greek, if you would, pharaoh in Egypt. Nobody understood what the Greeks were talking about. That's why the term is Greek to me. So the point was, if you didn't understand or didn't play like you understood or didn't go long, you didn't live long, but they knew how to do one thing well, they could kill you. So most of the people that came under Greek rulership, they learned to speak Greek or let them speak something or made some grunts, and pretty soon people adapted this nomadic type of exchange. Many Egyptian people left during this period of time, and they became known as gypsies, or the people from Egypt. They became Jups, or moving. I like to say that they started the Coptic religion because the Eastern Orthodox branch of the Coptic religion was a cross between when the Byzantine Empire takes place. The best way I remember this in history, and you may wish to associate it or not, I'd say they copped out. The saying in Friday, the saying in group, they copped. So they started the Coptic religion, they copped out, and these Jups, these wandering people, left Egypt. And again, by the way, Egypt is the way the Greeks pronounce it. That's why they call it Jups. The Egyptians themselves had all kinds of names for themselves, but it wasn't like Jups. But the Jups were the ones that these Greeks said they left. So you must understand them too. There's a great going away both into Central and Western Africa, and even all the way to the Far East by these people who leave at this particular time. As we look again at this history, it was under the Ptolemy Sotar that conspired with the priests there to form the first man-made religion. Now, it was the ancient Egyptians and the ancient Caphenians and the Natufian people and Nubian people who believed in Ra and what we call the 9 original gods. This was what was all believed in most of Africa. But under, again, Amenaphis, who later became Akhenaten, he brought in this belief in Aton, but he still kept the other gods in place. Under the Egyptians, they tried to get rid of all of the other Egyptian gods. And since none of these gods, even in animal form, and there were animal gods like Bes and so on like this, even looked like them, they said, we rule you, we beat you, you will make a god to resemble and this is the date when the first man-made god, or the first false god, came into Africa through Egypt again. The date was roughly 30 BC, was introduced as they appeared in Egypt there, was that they were not called pyramids. Pyramid is again a Greek name, and it's because they couldn't pronounce other things that were there, and as they saw these wonders which were there for them, they began to try and, in the best way they could, make some sense out of it and substitute words for the language of this guttural thing that they were learning again. The best way that I can begin to pronounce what the ancient Egyptians called this structure was a mirror. Pronounced M-E-R, spelled M-R like Mr. A mirror. A mirror was a four-sided equilateral triangle of great height. And presently there are researchers researching the word mirror, so you're very up to date when you can say mirror, M-E-R, spelled M-R for pyramid. The Egyptian phrase, which came from the Greeks in this case, for the Greeks said that something is tall and something that was big, what they call a synecdoche again. They can't really stand what U.S. stands for, or pyramid stands for, but they call it pyrabus or pyramidus. It really was a word or a phrase that they used which meant something going straight up. Something going straight up, a pyrabus, as they call it, something elongating straight up. And which later on they termed the word myrrh to pyramid, or some things going straight up, a bunch of things going straight up. That was a way of making their plural, if you would. The word obelisk, or obeliskos, O-B-E-L-I-S-K, are not Egyptian words either, but Greek words. And a Greek word, obelisk, means a little spit or skewer. When they would kill an animal, they would carve a piece of the animal off, stick it or skewer it, and then stick it on like what we call rotisserie, by holding it over and turning it, and then later on having a stone or something on each end that would turn it. And they called that an obeliskos, an obelisk, which later on came our word obelisk. So the obelisk and the pyramids and the mirrors are all different things. One was, of course, the things that the Egyptians and the people that preceded the Egyptians had used and built, and the other two were words that the Greeks had used to try and explain what they saw these sights. When they saw this big thing 481 feet in the air, it was though it was a big skewer or a big pyramid, something going straight up to reach their gods, or something you could stick an animal on rotisserie. And I know it sounds way out, but it is the truth, yes, about the whole thing. When we look even more into the Egyptian history and the pyramids of the Egyptians, we find a lot of misnomers. There was John Taylor, who was a London publisher, and I'm telling you a little bit of history there, who advanced the theory of divine revelation about the pyramid and states that the pyramid was built by the Greeks or ancestors of the Greeks to point out the time when Brittany or England would come into its heyday, and that the British pyramid inch was used extensively throughout the structure because it was based on a time to come for the great people in the British Isles, or Brittany as they refer to it. It was in the middle of the 1800s, about 1859 to 65, that a man by the name of Pierre Smith, some call him Smythe, researched and gave an opinion also, and he was considered to be an archaeologist, and stated that he agreed with John Taylor's pyramid inch. And then there was later a man by the name of David Davison, who was a structural engineer from Leeds, England, who recently supported both the divine prophecy and the British pyramid. The divine prophecy is that this was a sculpture in stone to mark the heyday when the great souls would come into Brittany and when mankind would be taken into a new age. It was in 1865 that a man by the name of Robert Menzies, M-E-N-Z-I-E-S, theorized that the Great Pyramid had two passageways, but one called the Grand Gallery that would lead up through a system represented 1 inch to a year, which they call not just a year of 365 days, but a solar year, which meant that it also would map how many miles it was from the sun to Earth through the pyramid passageway system, but it was also based on what was called the Great Dispensation. And he, being a Christian, stated that the birth of Christ and the nativity date for the year 1 AD was marked at the beginning of the Grand Gallery and reached its height mid-passageway or midway through the Grand Gallery. Now, all of these are very interesting theories. I will simply state that most of them can be struck down, and one is so idiotic and fantastic that you're going to laugh when you hear me explain it. The real Christian dispensation did not begin, as history shows, until the resurrection. So if you're a Christian again, what is referred to as the Pentecost of the crucifixion year, not the year 1 AD, but closer to the time of his death, the year 34 AD. So if they're measuring it in stone, they're measuring from the wrong year. Okay? Number two, the much heraldized, the much speculated pyramid inch, the British pyramid inch. And I want you to hear this. Now, one fact I want to show you this. Anybody still need be moving? The British pyramid inch, which all the research and archaeological jargon is known about, is 11/10,000 of an inch longer than the present inch that we use. All of that talk, all of that crawling around the pyramid, all of that so-called, was something 11/10,000 of an inch longer. Can you imagine what kind of fractionalization and mathematics or whatever went into trying to prove something 11/10,000 of an inch short? In other words, it was something to say, something to try and say that the whole thing was built for the great British Empire, which was before it come, and that these people were only way shores or preparers for them. So much for that. What we do find when we look at these pyramids there is something that still can't be explained too well. We find a structure there some 481 feet tall, some 750 feet at its base, composed of 2,500,000 blocks of stone weighing 6 million tons, guesstimated because I don't think anybody picked it up, built over a 20-year period of time for King Cheops, using slaves who worked only night and day, and again so he could be buried there. The year that they say that the Great One was built was about 2,686 BC, and the smallest stone there weighs 3.5 tons, and there are close to 1.5 million of them. The largest ones weigh 260 tons or more, and they are the red granites found in the king's chamber there in the central period. Just to give you some idea, most of the cars nowadays, or the ones, or the big ones again, weigh about 1.5 tons. When you get to 3 and 3.5 tons and stuff, you're really into big cars. When you go out and get one of the Boeing 747s with full cargo and maybe 260 passengers, everything else on it, it will only weigh 75 tons. So you begin to get a picture of what I'm saying. When you start talking about the red granite, red black granite, red and granite structures there in the King's Chamber, and so you're talking about 3 747s into one. And the idea is who moved them, how did they quarry them, how did they get them there. And I have a whole lecture, of course, on pyramids, which I won't digress now. I'll just simply state this. If they're made of granite, granite is one of the hardest stones known to man. It's from compressed igneous rock, and it's usually found under mountain ranges. There are no close mountain ranges there. But no matter what they were made of, if they weighed 3.5 tons, if it was made of feathers, they weighed 3.5 tons. If it was 260 tons, it was made of newspaper. It was still 260 tons. How did they move it? They had no derricks and cranes. They had no pneumatic drills. They had no caissons. How did they move it? And when you did get the actual granite pillars that they see in the King's Chamber and lining the entranceway there, the Masonic people talk about, they had to have come from a quarry that was at least under a mountain range, and the closest mountain range to that part is 855 miles away. How did they do it? And And even though they say it was made out of shale rock and it's made out of sandstone and all these kind of things, as I say, tonnage is tonnage. Another thing they show in the encyclopedias and they show on these movies, these spectacles by J.R. Rank and Gerald Zelnick and Caesar B. DeMille, and so they show these great big stones being moved by rocks, and so by ropes being pulled and so on like that. Well, where did they get the ropes from? The interesting thing is rope is said to have been made in the tensile strength needed there from hemp. And hemp is one of those kind of arid plants that seeks water. There is a process called reckling by which the underground tuber of the hemp plant seeks water. This they pull up, dry it out in the sun or heat, knock it into a striaration, and then weave it together, wet it, and this is where you get your rope from. Well, all the hemp plants going down the Nile or near the Red Sea or wherever else couldn't make up enough rope to move 2,500,000 stones. The smallest one weighing 3.5 tons, and then they graduate to 35, 50, 75, 150, 260. I don't care what you use. And they said that they moved them over wooden rollers. That's interesting to me too. Because wood comes from what? Trees. The hardest tree in all of Africa is mahogany. You definitely couldn't use cypress and palm and these kind of things. And in the area of the Congo and the area in Zaire, and so where you would grow these kind of trees, there aren't enough trees there to move 2,500,000 lots of stone. If you use, say, just 4 or 5 trees to one, how often do you think it would grind out? And here you had to move 16 miles from the closest town in the middle of the desert, and in many cases again thousands of miles from its quarry site. And plus the fact, once you fell trees, you have to trim them, you have to cut off the branches and stuff. You have a whole industry. Here you have 100,000 slaves working 20 years, but now you've got the quarrying, building, and now tree felling. And if, of course, you say, well, they went and they got sequoia, or they got pine, or they got oak, you must remember that Columbus hadn't been born, that they didn't know the world was round, so they couldn't get to America, they couldn't get to Greenland, they couldn't get to Alaska, so how did they get these trees and things? And the story just go on and on. Everyone knows if you're an engineer, the easiest thing to build on is sand, right? You want to build a structure that's 481 feet tall and weighs 2 million tons, build it on sand, right? That's always fun. Just walk in sand sometimes. And of course, when you have sand, you have sandstorms. And some sandstorms run 7 months out of the year, 12 a day, sometimes 12 an hour. What did they do before they got the thing to be 90 feet high when a sandstorm? They built in the face of a sandstorm? Or did they run back to the city 16 miles away? And then afterwards they had fun because that's find the pyramid. You had to go back and dig under sand to find. I mean, the whole thing begins to be ridiculous. But yes, that's what they say. And when you read some of the ancient legends, you find that they say that when they first settled into that area, that the pyramids were there. And that one of the reasons they did settle them was because of the people and the stories that had gone out and a great light that's shown in the sky toward these areas. But that's another thing too. I do want to close this portion off by saying this though. The 3 pyramids that are there, which means that after they built one 481 feet high, 2,500,000 stones, they then built right alongside of it almost those 3/4 of the types, which meant that whatever they did then it was fantastic, they tripled the fantastic. Is that a word? They tripled the fantastic. In other words, they just built. Whatever they did was easy for them to do. And no people on earth at that time had that type of power to do what they did, because when they gave to Gus K. Newberg and Associates back in '69, which was the chief engineer for the state of Illinois at that time, an assignment that said, if you had to build these 3 pyramids, or just one of them, how would you undertake it? What would you do? He said, I turned down the contract. Okay. So, again, that's never been explained, and yet we are still teaching that to our kids in school, and that's the kind of foolishness that is part of black history that is still personified. Whether your teachers or principals, I don't know, but it doesn't matter. It's still silliness that is being taught, and people are buying it. The 3 names, of course, for the pyramids were not Cheops, Khafre, and the unclassified, but were simply called Khufu for the big one, Khafre for Shepard, and Mankures for Microanalysis. And they seemingly were there not only when the first Egyptians got there, but definitely there before the first Greek ever set face there. I will say this too, and reasons that we'll be getting into that the so-called Axis power lost World War II. The Axis, of course, were supposedly Italy, Germany, and Japan. It's because the Italians were so at the throats of the Germans, and the Germans were so at the throats of the Italians, they could not support each other long enough in Tunisia, and when Rommel went into his Egyptian campaign and African campaign, because it was just this one discrepancy that the Italians had stated that their ancestors had been doing great things when the Germans or Gauls and Prussians were in caves. And Hitler didn't like that, Mussolini didn't like that, and they didn't support each other. And that's just another strange quirk of history, because it almost repeated itself lately when I think it was Nasser, and then later on, who was the one that they killed in Egypt? Sadat met with some of the Israeli prime ministers again. Before Menachem Begin, there was somebody else that they had there for a while. And he made the slip by saying that the Israelis were going to visit again the home where their ancestors had built the pyramids. And it was the doctor that took him up and said, no, you will visit, as others have, the land where you found your knowledge. And of course, that didn't help either for that. So our history and wars are really based on a lot of things that are very racist, but not in the sense we think, in the sense of people trying to claim the ancestorhood of a nation and of a country and of a continent which we're just recently beginning to respect. And we'll next week get into the migration patterns that were in Africa itself, called Kima, some of the ancient cities of Africa, the kings and queens, including Balikas and Makeda, and one who was involved in antiquity that stopped Alexander from going further, and you don't even hear about her. So I'll keep that with you, you can get a history lesson there. And we'll also get into, again, some of the great ancient cities and what they did. And this one is open to questions, statements, and comments as you would like.
Yes. You briefly mentioned the headpiece that the Egyptians wore. You mentioned that because some of them had oblong heads, it was one of the reasons why maybe they wore those headpieces. Didn't they have a name for those headpieces, or what was it called?
Yes, they did. I don't remember the name. I've heard, in fact, they had two names, and I don't remember either one. So I'd rather not say it. I'm sorry, it's just one of those things that was slipped my mind.
He'll do it Sunday.
Right?
He'll do it Sunday.
Is it? Oh, really?
No, he'll do it Sunday.
Oh, you do? Okay.
And you also mentioned that the two snakes meant both rulership and spirituality, right?
Yes, we're told that the double Uraeus, which is the two column snakes and the big headdress, whatever it was called, meant a ruler of Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt. I think that mainly it meant that there was a rulership of Egypt, but that Egypt was not divided when the first pharaohs were there. They went to a long extent to make sure that Egypt was not divided. It was divided by class structure, not that these were not Egyptians. One was a ruling class, where the pharaohs and rulers came from. The other was that they was a more common class, and even that foreigners come to their borders and settle there. So that Uraeus, to me, does not mean a rulership of ancient and Upper and Lower Egypt, but a ruler who also had psychic power. So you will hear two different kind of versions from archaeologists and historians.
I've seen photographs of Capri. At least they say that he was Capri, and he had a bird of some sort on the top of his headpiece, right in the back of it. Do you know what that represents?
Yeah, they said it represents.
Or do you ever seen that particular photo?
I've seen the usage of that throughout Egyptian history. They say that it represents a falcon, and I feel it represents a cock. The falcon was definitely a bird that had a lot of respect in Egypt, and it was said that a falcon even flew at the opening of King Tutankhamun's tomb when the curse was put upon Lord Cadaveron and so on like that. But more, it seems to represent the cock, or the winged soul, the higher soul. And in fact, it is based on the caduceus, which is, I think, most medical allopathic practitioners cannot explain. And that's simply one that looks like this, if you don't mind me taking a couple of minutes to digress this.
Go right
that type of symbology comes close. It's not, of course, a perfect replica to what is called the caduceus. Okay. This caduceus, or what is called now the sign for the allopathic practitioner, or doctor of medicine, was used in Kush, was used Canaanite dynasties, was used even in the Songhae, found in King Tustum all the way to the Songhae Empire, on the Chancellor Ibn Kala in Timbuktu, and at Sangare. There is nothing new about that. The Greeks did not invent that. And this is a metaphysical explanation there. One of the things you see there is the globe, a winged globe, which some say represented the winged earth or the sun. I think it represented a kind of a higher consciousness that these people were trying to use. And when you see the line going down, which meant that man fell from great heights, or man, what they call, devoluted, devolved, and then man must evolute, or evolve, or come upward from the depth he fell. And then it shows the entwined serpents, which have really triple meanings. I don't want to go into a lot of it now because that's more in the metaphysical classes, but it can show either that man fell through 4 stages and entwined himself with the 4 great beasts of earth, or that man came up. Also, it has a symbology that is representative of the nerve trunks around our own spinal column, and that's to say I want to kind of share from. But this symbol, and sometimes it also has a lower triangle on it. Was an ancient symbol used even in the days for Imhotep, and obviously that came full-blasted out of Nubia, which meant that it possibly was one used in ancient Mesopotamia amongst the Tufian and Akkadian people, and supposedly some of these so-called first Jews or Hebrew people or Hebraic people, if you would. So there's nothing new about the symbol, but it's a symbol that has great meaning. And that caduceus, where it started from, really represented the time you would have a serpent there or a serpent at the bottom, which meant a person who was, I don't want to kind of give this away in this instance, but it could have meant wisdom, as snakes, nahishma, did not necessarily just mean snakes like you walk on the serpent. It also meant energy or wave column, flows, which could also be brain power, if you would, or waves of things coming in or whichever you would. But to attribute that these people have this kind of wisdom and knowledge, of course, is what the present archaeologists and historians don't like to do. Yet they're faced with the mummies now that have artificial hearts. Dr. Christian Bernard was not the first one. They artificial teeth so embedded in the jawbone that they didn't even know they were artificial until recently. RNA and DNA molecular structures that can still be revitalized, and one mummy recently bled. The things that are happening now are just amazing. So yes, these people did have a knowledge and a wisdom that has been lost, not has not been discovered, but it's been lost.
Dr. Blair.
Yes.
You know Dr. Christian's theories about the Egyptian pyramid. Can you tell me your theory?
I really would rather not propose my theory in that instance. I'd rather just go with what history can't prove, what history can prove, and then leave it open to your own conjecture. I think so much has been proposed by so-called scholars with their theories and making students believe it till the real truth of what they found cannot be studied to which you reach your own conclusions based on facts. Facts are that we know of nothing now that can duplicate those buildings. And fact is that at the time they were built, supposedly there was nothing, no science that could do what these things could do.
Do you think about the higher being or human being such as UFOs and anything?
Well, that's okay. Since this is question and answer section, understand these answers are now strictly, from a personal point of view, our history lesson by chronology has been given. Much of the talk about the ancient gods has been found to be extremely interesting. They have found mummifications of people who were no more than 3 inches tall. They found them not only in parts of what they call Zimbabwe, but they found them in Colorado, they found it in Lower Saskatchewan, Canada. They have also found just femur and tibia bones of people who, the femur and tibia bones are 19 inches long, which means if you put that with a total endoskeleton, that person could have been a 20-foot tall giant. And these were not dinosaur bones, okay, but these were people of a biped that was actually seen in Homo genus erectus, as they call it. They found mummifications of these. They have found that some of these mummifications that are of so-called kings or descendants to kings, much like Imhotep and so, were uniquely made and all had these crazy shaped heads, or see when their skull bones were different. And it was during these periods of time when these type of kings or advisors lived that these great dynasties seemed to flourish, that this magical power almost seemed to come about. If this could lead to a talk of UFOs, or it can lead to a talk of aliens helping people, and it can lead to who the Great Pyramid builders were, then these are conjectures that these were some basis, in fact. And would be no more of a fairy tale to believe, if followed to its logical conclusion, than the fairy tales were told anyway, that they were built by 20,000 slaves over, no, 100,000 slaves over 20 years, so that the body could be rested there, and they never did find a mummification of a king in Kiasaku's pyramid. So even after that, they forgot to bury him, or he got walked away or something. I hope that wasn't a circle confusion, but I'm saying that one fairy tale, if it is no better or greater than the other, so I say you have as much choice to believe what you want based on the so-called facts of the pyramid. Okay, that's all I hand over. Yes,
yeah. You said Imhotep was a brain surgeon, heart surgeon, and these other things, and that he learned from the priests. Who were the priests?
These were the priests of, obviously, Nubia, the priests that were brought over in the first dynasty under Menes Narmer that came with them. The class of people who were not rulers, but were obviously the magicians and religious persons of that time and day.
So we really don't know much about these priests. These are the things that they're researching now in the archaeological digs that you mentioned going on in Sudan.
Yes, yes. And it is interesting, too. When the British and Portuguese and French so begin to look into these lands of the Saracens, into these lands of Africa, some interesting things came about. As soon as they begin to find these cities beneath the sand, beneath these so-called cities, and begin to come up with all this gold and parchments and strange things, and so it was the area of Aswan. And what do? They flooded the entire area. That's where they built the Aswan Dam. They said to irrigate the land. It has not done anything to the encroaching Sahara. It still spreads. All it did was create a mess over there for the indigenous people, which we've seen in history what it's done, and flood history forever, except for diving bells and who knows those papyrus that had writings on them and now destroyed. As soon as they begin to have an area that everybody can go and excavate, research, and archaeology, is the flood. Lost there are the ruins of Nubia possibly forever. And why did they do it there? Interesting.
Who was they?
I just mentioned the British, the French, the Caucasian people of Northern Europe. Yes. Well, I keep you very.
I missed last week's lesson, and I was wondering if you had any handouts, segregation, things.
I have handouts, but I don't have them now. Another couple was back sitting in front of you that asked also about cassette tapes or some kind of tapings that had missing that they were quite concerned in possibly losing that information. We do have enough handouts, and so that we can probably restore that and give it to you and make it worth a while. So all you missed is say what is that, which I guess is a big part, but considering what's coming up, we can be able to see together if you want. Well, questions, comments about the next study?
Dr. Blair, in Malcolm X's autobiography, he refers to King Solomon's man, the motion picture that
Cecil B. DeMille's, when Deborah Carr sees this Egyptian, sees this Watusi, and he's on the mountain, and she tells Stuart Granger that he looks just like one of the ancient pharaohs of Egypt. And you know, like the Watusi were like 6'5" in height, and you were saying like the ancient Egyptians, they were like around 5 feet rather than taller, 6'5".
Yes, you'll find the ancient Egyptians were very small people, and as far back as you go in the history of most lands on Earth, the further back you go, the smaller the people look, the darker the skin, the longer the head, because you run into this branch of people called Negritos. As I will show next week when I bring in some of H.G. Wells' writings, which nobody wants to believe that H.G. Wells ever said, I'll bring you the book and read it to you. These Negritos seemingly were the first people of Earth. Wherever you go, it is then hybrids and miscegenations and other things that then seem to cause these people's features to change and to make you feel that this is the land that they came from, which is really not their indigenous land. In comparison to what Delbert Blare say under this reference again, they have said many things.
Because I noticed that Watusi have long heads also.
Yes. Well, interesting too, when you study the Watusi, and the Watusi that are, you say, about 6'5" or so, are really the more modern Watusi. The more ancient Watusi, the women were 6'5" and 7 foot. Some of the men got to be 11 and 12 feet tall. And you find them around, within 15 miles of Lake Victoria on the western banks. On the eastern banks near Kilimanjaro, you find the Pixies. So here you have a very unique thing again on Earth. Around one lake, Lake Victoria, and a very mysterious mountain, Kilimanjaro. You know the legends of this that is just replete, right? Old stories and books about it. You have the smallest people and the tallest people in it. All around one lake, all within 50 miles. Why? You know, why? What kind of unique situation is there? How does it come to be? There's some Africa itself, by using the name Africa, and history itself is just open for investigation and study. And that's what they're doing. But they just would make black people carrying middlemen, believe that it's all closed, all shut, and there's nothing to learn and know. We're just beginning to find out about our country. Why would we say?
Did they rename Africa after Africanus, the Roman conqueror?
Yes. Leo Africanus. Well, some say the Roman conqueror, some say Leo Africanus, who was a navigator or a map maker, who the 10th Pope liked and named the whole land after because he didn't know that much about it.
Is that also supposed to be part of Asia? That,
what?
What they call Kima. Kima is the name of it.
Kima?
Yeah, they refer to it as, what they refer to.
Well, Africa is almost to itself an island, really, except for the very small link with Portugal there and Spain there. It almost is unto itself. It has no borders. If you go to Europe, it would be like a peninsula of Asia. It would be almost like an annexation of Asia. But that's another class, too, when you start naming the continents. I don't want to go into that, but we will be going into that in detail. Okay, questions, statements, or comments about tonight's class? Yes.
Besides the scriptural reference of Exodus, have you found anything else that refers to, as a people? It seems like we would have kept some kind of record of that in the hieroglyphics.
Of the Exodus. Let's say that supporting and standing on its own, the Exodus is very speculative. Especially since it was done supposedly under Ramesses and under Ramesses II. And especially since it involved the people under Moses who left a corrupt, oppressive society. If you read history, the first Jew anyway, whatever that means nowadays, because that's something to me that's been really messed up, is Abraham. And you're talking about a year, no more than 3000 BC, roughly almost the time of the heyday of Egypt, the 18th dynasty. The first Jews come into Egypt under Jacob, even the famine in Canaan, and you only had, 19 then. And then with the Exodus, you got close to 500,000, at least 250,000. Where do they come from? Who did tell when this baby is brought in there. So there's so many things about the Exodus and about the time that they inserted that they just, to really give a whole speculation of the whole thing. If Abraham was the first Jew who came out of Ur in the land of Chaldea, as the book states, and yet with the Hittite Empire army came in, they were mixed with Jews, and many of them were Jews. Well, that is only Abraham then was only, 30, 31? How did you beget that many that they take up arms and come into Egypt as an army? Yeah. That's just the tips of the iceberg. There's so much more.
I got to take a same consideration too, that I was just wondering if there was anything that was recently.
Well, there's a lot, and we have a lot more history of it.
The number, people of the northern Sudan,
Yes.
are you familiar with them?
I've heard.
They're also very powerful.
As are the Angambi's. There's another, but none seem as tall as the overall set of what you see. Okay,
you had mentioned not the 9 true gods of Egypt, or a reference to 9 gods, and I was wondering if you could just name them, because I have no reference to that.
well, that's what we talked about last week. That was last week, the needs of creation, which means the 9 original gods of creation. Ra, Tefnut, Nanu, Nephthys, Geb, Denben, half. How many is that? 7. Well, Ma'at, yeah, okay. Ma'at, yes. Well, anyway, so those are close. And we have it on a sheet there. And then there were 5 lesser gods, they were Osiris, Horus, and Seth, and Isis, who was taken from it, perhaps, or the cow goddess. But yes, you can get those sheets if you're interested.
In fact, getting back to the brother's question about the Exodus, I understand that they claim like the so-called Jews supposed to have been in bondage for 400 years, and usually they would take on the names of the people who had, were held in bondage. And I understand they didn't come out with none of those names. And just like when Walter Cronkite was telling Sadat and Ben Bacon that, in fact, when he was telling Sadat and, and Bacon were over there in Israel, and I wasn't trying to thought, but he was, I'm trying to disclaim, oh, that's right. Sadat was saying, as far as, when he said that Bacon people built pyramids, Sadat said that we had that nowhere in our history. In other words, they were negating the fact that the lie that the so-called, Jews are supposed to help, slaves to build pyramids. So he said that was nowhere in their history. And usually, just like we take on Smith and Johnson and things like the names of the slave masters, and you can't find so-called Jews with names of Egyptians, if they were their slaves.
There are supposedly, and again, I'll have to go through some of our research, some, even those who reached the state of priestcraft and were generals and advisors in the cabinets that had Egyptian names that supposedly were from the line of these Hebraic people, Hebraic, who later on had become Hebrews, who later on somewhere doesn't be confused with Jews. Now, I don't like to do that. Yes, I don't like to go too far from the parent text, because I like to be able to tell you time, place, name, and change, and to do so. But in the main, the whole story, from the interest to the Exodus, just doesn't make sense if you take the time period of who was ruling, what they were doing, and how many came in and how many left. And then you must always ask the question too: is a Jew a ethnic lineage of a person from a land, or a religious denomination of people who convert? And if that's the changing over does not work.
Well, Jews, when they say about Judah, just explain that meaning of the chosen.
And Israelis are those who saw the El, those who worship God, those who worship the Almighty. Well, many did that. Even unto those Egyptians under Amon did that.
We talked about Imhotep being doing all types of brain surgery and things of that nature. Do you
At
have
least during his administration, what do you think of that?
doing what?
At least during his advising administration, or he advised his soldier, so at least during that time, when Imhotep was chief physician, what do you think of that?
Okay, what about Zoser himself? What was Zoser really known for? What was he was who? He was the pharaoh, but is there anything that you found in research that Zoser done that for people to remember him by? You know, did he perform anything, say, other than step pyramids, the building of those, or was there anything else that he was really noted for?
Well, Zoser, not really that I know. Zoser, his father was Kesemoi. Zoser was one who seemingly wanted these arts to be brought out. He opened it up for the people who had talents to express them in all fields at this part of Egypt. Now, I would have to do more research to find out if there's any particular thing about Zoser. To my knowledge, it isn't, but it doesn't mean a thing. It's just that my research is not, cannot carry that.